Welcome to Dr. Roger and Friends, the bright side of longevity, hosted by three Ps in a podcast, Doc Roger, Teresa, and Danielle. Thanks for joining us for coffee and conversation.
Well, welcome everybody, the bright side of longevity. We're happy to have you with us again. It's nothing without you guys. We'd just be three people talking over coffee. That's all it would be. But knowing that you're out there makes it a whole lot better. Well, today's about expectations. And how does that affect our health and our journey in this life? You know, Dr. David Stoop has written a book, but within that book, it may even be the title, it says, "You are what you think about." And you know, if you're talking about expectations, well, that I think that's important. You know, they say that people who are half full, the optimistic people, so they expect good things, and that they live 7.5 years longer. Did you know that?
Yeah, it's a powerful bit of research, 7.5 years. And those are the people who think about their future and, yes, aging as a time of growth and purpose and fulfillment. They not only live that much longer, but they live better. They have less illness, and they're better physically, and they have better brain health. There's so many benefits to choosing to see your future as an opportunity and not a burden.
And I think the opposite is true. I mean, rather than just, okay, people have their normal life, and if they're positive, it's so much better. But if it's negative, it's so much worse, isn't it?
Absolutely. The research shows that clearly.
Yeah. It's just not about, you know, depression or stress or things like that. It's cancer, and it's dementia, and it's heart disease, and it's all the bad players.
Yep. So
it's a pretty important thing. So, you know, we hear about positive thinking and things like that. You know about that, Danielle. Tell us about positive.
I always, I consider myself a Pollyanna, and I think that's become a bad word. And I feel like I should clarify. There's positivity and there's magical thinking. You know, the positive person is going to expect the best outcome and plan for the best, but it's very action-based. You know, if something doesn't go exactly right, they're going to adapt, and they're going to say, how can I turn this into the best possible experience? So when I say I'm a Pollyanna, I'm thinking that way. I'm not thinking of, the annoying person when you're going through something rough and they say, oh, hang in there, it'll get better. And you just want to throw something at them. To me, that's magical thinking. That's, things don't go well, but instead of saying, boy, that's terrible that happened, what can I do? You're ignoring it. Oh, it'll get better. And it's not action-based. Have you noticed that with magical thinking? It's, I'm going to think positive, but I'm going to wait for stuff to happen.
It reminds me of that story. You've probably heard it. Joe wants to win the lottery, and he's praying and hoping he's going to win the lottery. And this goes on for years, and nothing happens. And finally, the big booming voice comes and say, Joe, buy a ticket. There's things that we have to do. We can't just sit there and expect good things to happen. We can, but it also requires us to do something. Besides being positive, it's about, okay, I'm going to make this more likely to happen by doing this, and this. I'm going to be more healthy because I'm going to move a little more and keep learning, and that sort of thing. So I think positive thinking is probably more about being optimistic and being realizing that, if I pay attention, that if I do what I learn should be good to do or will be valuable, or that, good things will happen. I know that they will happen. Maybe not everything, but I have this phrase I've always told my grandkids, and I actually told my kids, and I said, expectations kill joy. And they'd look at me all puzzled, but as they got older, they understood. If we have unreasonable expectations, that sometimes causes, if we don't reach those expectations, or those things don't happen, that we're disappointed. So, if you go to on a vacation and you're hiking in the Rockies, and for a week, and for 5 days it's beautiful, but 2 days it rains, and you focus on the rainy days, you're bummed out by that vacation. You want to see what I mean about expectations? So you can expect good things to happen, but it has to be reasonable. It can't be that magical thing that you're talking about, Danielle. There's great research on this. Ellen Langer, right? Teresa,
Yes.
Ellen Langer is at Harvard, and she wrote a book called Counterclockwise. But she did an experiment in the 70s, and she took 7 men in their 70s, back in the 70s, and she had totally constructed a small area in New Hampshire that was right out of the 50s. So 20 years earlier than those men were at that time. So she recreated an environment that was what it was like when they were in their 50s. And she took photos, she took blood tests, hearing tests, and she filmed them as they were arriving and filmed them when they left. And the differences were quite unbelievable. Everything improved. Her conclusion was, living in that environment, their expectations of themselves were more aligned with the way they were 20 years ago, and they began to act that way. And everything, even the blood parameters and the hearing tests and the vision tests, were all better. Isn't that incredible?
It is incredible. And one thing to note of those men in her study, they were living with their adult children, and they were being cared for by their adult children. So stepping into her 1959 was a drastic change for them.
I didn't realize that. That's even more significant, I think. So this is why many times I tell people, don't live with your children as you age, because they love you so much, and they don't want anything bad to happen to you. They'll treat you like a bubble person, and you can't grow then. And so, wow, that's significant. I'm glad you told me that. So if expectations, and we don't want to get crazy about it, magical thinking, and we know that it has the possibilities to significantly improve our lives and make it more likely that what we expect will happen. This isn't a story, but it's a quote. So Henry Ford, you've probably heard the quote where he says, if you think you can do something, or you think you cannot do something, you're probably right. I think this goes right to the heart of what we're talking about today. That and Thoreau said, you will never hit what you don't aim at.
Yep.
So you got to be ready to fail, or maybe fall short of what you maybe wanted to achieve, but celebrate what you do achieve, because indeed, if you do stretch, if you get out of your comfort zone, if you stretch a little bit, you will improve. Again, with reasonable expectations, you'll reach them. And if they're unreasonable, well, be satisfied with what you do achieve, because you will improve, and that's what you should celebrate.
But, if you adapt, you expect the best, and maybe the best doesn't happen, and you adapt, sometimes something better happens, but it's action-based. The men in the study were not being taken care of. They were like, no, you'll carry your own bags upstairs, you'll do.
That is a key point, Danielle. I'm so glad you raised it. I know in my life, and maybe perhaps you've had it too, that there was something that I thought I just had to have. Like I wanted to go to a particular medical school or something. I had to do that. And I didn't get in to that medical school, and I was all bummed out, and thinking that, I had fallen short and feeling badly about myself. But got into a magnificent medical school that for me was much more appropriate and catapulted me into a life that I hadn't seen for myself but which I know now was much better for me. I was much more suited for it. It was much more rewarding. And so sometimes be careful what you hope for.
That's right. There's a great paper by Mather Lifeways, and it's an orange paper, and it's called Self-Fulfilling Prophecy, How Perceptions of Aging Affect Our Later Years. So highly recommend that. It's not a long, it's only 8 pages. It's a great paper. And they offer a story that I think really illustrates what we're talking about. And I'm not going to read it, but I'll paraphrase it. 2 women, they both slip on an icy sidewalk. They both sprain an ankle. They both obviously need to recover. And one was very diligent in her physical therapy and got her strength back. And her mobility was definitely limited for a little bit, but she took that as an opportunity to read some books that she had been putting off and catch up with family and friends with her tablet. So the same situation. The other woman decided it was the beginning of the end, that things were going to just go downhill from there. She only halfway did her rehab, and then her mobility got worse over time, and then her health began to fail because of her lack of mobility. So it really was the downward spiral, but the point is she decided that it was going to be that downward spiral. And I think that's a great illustration of what we're talking about.
Yeah, because she didn't believe that she could do it, so she didn't even try. So if she at least had the optimism that I can do this.
Ellen Langer, in this experiment we talked about, it launched her career. She has focused on this for the rest of her career. She was quite young at the time, and she's been at it now for decades. And in her latest book, Counterclockwise, she lays out how she's now drilling down into the physiology of the brain and the body, that how expectations drive the brain and the body, and then the body, to bring to reality what you expect. Again, you may not always make it. So I think that's just magical there. That's a good magical thing. I think it's about expecting great things, having a positive attitude, be confident, and yet be able to accommodate.
We hope this podcast is a source of inspiration. If you're ready to dive deeper into these concepts and really apply them in your life, join us over at Master Life. You'll have a personalized experience and lots of support to create your own long, bright future. mymasterlife.com. You've been listening to Dr. Roger and Friends, The Bright Side of Longevity. If you like the show, please rate and review, and be sure to click to follow.